Good evening. My name is Tanya Taylor Rubinstein, and I'm the Global Story Coach, and I'm talking to you as usual when I make these videos pretty late at night at my home outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico. I actually live in a teeny tiny little town about 20 miles north of Santa Fe, about 100 yards from a pueblo. And it's an incredible place for me to do my work, and this is where I invite my solo show clients to come work with me, who have come from all over the world. And I've been really blessed to work with so many incredible people on their one-person shows and have them come out and do solo performance boot camps with me here in rural New Mexico, and then take their shows to New York or Edinburgh, Toronto, San Francisco, all over the place at theaters and festivals. So tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about what makes a great solo show, because that's been a huge part of my business. And though I do story coaching with visionary entrepreneurs on brand stories, I work with people on their memoirs, and I train other people to sort of become like me, but in their own versions, to become a professional story coach, whether they want to do it in theater or retirement communities or corporate settings. My deep root system with story is really with solo shows. That was the way in for me. I started as a professional actor many years ago, and met my mentor, the late Spalding Gray, when I was 20 years old. Really blessed, because I recognized at that point that I wasn't as in love with the form of conventional theater and portraying other characters as I was in love with the form of intimate story. And he stood up on that stage and spoke into what I would have considered the time, the unspeakable, the taboo, the shadow parts of life, the dark humor, the things that really run through our heads as opposed to what always comes out of our mouth. And I did my own solo shows here in New Mexico for many years. I'm working on a new solo show this year and have been coaching others as a solo performance coach, have worked with hundreds of people over these last couple of decades, and it has been amazing. And so I wanted to talk tonight for those of you who are out there and think, I want to do a solo show. What makes a great solo show? What are some of the elements of it? How do I get started on it? And I'm just improvising this as I go. This certainly isn't going to be everything that it takes, but perhaps some things for you to think about, improvise about, write about. So I think in terms of every solo show, one thing that I want to say off the top is a lot of people come and want to work with me, who want to do an autobiographical storytelling show with characters dropped in, the sort of what's become classic autobiographical form, but in a theatrical embodied way. And many people come in and they think they're going to tell their whole lives, their whole life story in a solo show, and they try to. And when people work with me, that's one of the first things we're going to shift away from, because very much like a memoir, a successful memoir, and there, maybe I'll bring in a little bit about memoir too, and the difference between that and autobiography. A strong memoir and a strong solo show share something in common, in that they have a thematic focus, and that they have a timeline, whether it's one particular year in the life where one's life changed forever, one particular day in one's life, where life changed forever. It can be a very heightened experience. And if it is going to run the course of a lifetime, that the focus is very strong. I've had people who, I'm thinking of one woman I work with who's very brilliant, very, very great improviser and actor, and her show did span her lifetime, but thematically it was very strong. It was very focused on her experiences of being diagnosed as bipolar. There were flashbacks to childhood where some red flags were there around that, and her putting the pieces together, and then her own spiritual and healing journey around how she chose to do with that. Or another client I worked with where the big overriding theme in his show, and it was an amazingly successful show because he's a very, very gifted man, very gifted improviser, was around his father's suicide and how that impacted him throughout his whole life. But there's so much in that kind of process then that is cut away, that is cut out, that one has to let go of. Because the tendency when doing a first solo show, and I include myself in this, when I wrote my first solo show, I was 26 years old, ended up performing my fourth solo show that I wrote that was strong enough to put up on stage and get produced when I was 31. And that show was called Honeymoon in India. And it all took place in 1 month in India when I thought I was going to get enlightened, and the guru turned out to be kind of crazy. And I almost died instead. And it was kind of a Wizard of Oz, there's no place like home story. And it was the spiritual awakening, but not in the way I expected. And it was very funny, but it was in a finite period of time. And the first show I wrote was also trying to get in my whole life. And we get attached to this. And it's the same thing in memoir. You know, if it's going to span the course of your whole life, but it's going to be focused on you, you know, your sexual awakening where you come out as a lesbian at the age of 35, and all the things that thematically have to do with that go into the book, or the pivotal experiences that are pointing towards that, if that's the direction of your show. I've worked with people with cancer, you know, who have told Julia Sweeney, who was Pat on Saturday Night Live, did the most wonderful monologue, solo show about cancer, God Said Ha, many years ago. And it was brilliant, and it was in a finite period of time, even though often things do move back and forth in time. So the first thing you need to know is you're not getting your whole life in a solo show, and you're not going to get it in a memoir either. And I was saying the difference between a memoir is that it's very focused, narrative driven, and thematically driven, as opposed to a more old school ego-based autobiography, which usually is very boring anyway, because people, excuse me, just are talking about their accomplishments as opposed to the real inner life and hero's journey, heroine journey struggles that are elements of a great solo show if it's an autobiographical story with that kind of transformational arc. There are other kinds of solo shows. It could be an all-character solo show for strong actors to really show their acting chops. You know, John Leguizamo, some of his early work comes to mind with that. Mambo Mouth, one of my favorite solo shows I ever saw. And all the characters were linked because they were all lived on John's block in the Bronx growing up, and he played men and women, and he played his alcoholic father, and he played the drag queen down the street, on the corner, and he played his 7-year-old self, and he played some of his aunties and his mother, and they were linked and pulled together a whole show. And I have worked with people who have developed strong character shows, and they need to be linked again thematically. So those are really essential things when you're starting to work on a solo show. Also, the voice. I don't think most solo shows, people, if you just want to sit down and write them, Solo shows, the voice, it's an oral tradition. It's the storyteller in you, the characters in you. It's really, I think the strongest shows come out of improvisation, solo improv. You can do it on your feet. It's something I teach. I teach classes in it. I work with my clients on it to take a topic, and very much if you've done free writing, which many people know of through Natalie Goldberg's work, and now through so many other people, free writing to get the critic, editor set aside. You focus on just a topic and bam, you keep your hand moving across the page. Well, creating a strong solo show, you want to do the same thing with your voice. So you have a topic or have somebody throw out a topic to you and just repeat the topic. Let's say my topic is the year 1969, 1969, 1969, and I'm going to be moving around while I'm saying the topic, and wait till something, an image or a feeling arises from my body. 1969. I'm 5 years old. I'm standing under my grandparents' magnolia tree at their farm in Maryland. There's a soft wind blowing. I look up to the sky and I start talking to the clouds and asking my real family, who I think are Martians, from My Favorite Martian, the TV show, to bring me home. That's just like something off the top of my head. You take it wherever it takes you. So it's like free writing, but it's actually free speaking through improvisation. Strong solo shows, time. People often are thinking about time. What makes a great solo show? How long does it take to tell the story and really grab the audience? You're looking at a range, I would say, of 65 to 75 minutes. Point of view. Point of view is everything. It's everything in writing. It's everything in storytelling. It's everything in your solo performance work. It's not so much the events of the story. This is how I'm going to end this video tonight. It's something for you to chew on. Many people live the same archetypal stories. We're human beings. We have more in common than we imagine with each other. Often we think, oh, I have such an original story. And some people do. Some people do really have lived an experience that is very rare, very unique. One woman I produced here in New Mexico, who I met because she won the Fringe in New York, had an interesting experience that was pretty unique as a stripper in Alaska, of all places. And she had a unique point of view on it. She came out of that experience and had a lot of wisdom and a lot of insight, and did a great show called Naked in Alaska. But, point of view is your eyes through which you see the experience. This is the offering for the audience. And this is why you can take the same topic, my experience of having cancer, my experience of having a baby, my experience of living in France for a year. And one person can tell the story, and it's okay, it's their heartfelt story, and there is a place for that. And another, it's just killer, theatrical. And what are those points of view that make the story pop, that make it come alive, that make it theatrical, that get audiences in the seats? Okay, so here are the real kernels of what you're looking to bring to your story. One way in is humor. One way in is direct spiritual insight and wisdom, and not in a preachy way, but a way that comes directly, that arises directly from sharing the experience and what one receives and learns from the experience. It's like the Joseph Campbell work, bringing the offering back to your tribe. For musicians, it may be music, bringing music in. It gives the audience, it opens up the point of view, and is also a way for them to absorb some of the deeper, possibly more poignant or heavier material. And the other way for strong actors is character work. So even in an autobiographical script where you've got a strong narrative and you're telling a story, you want to bring in characters if that's an option for you. So those are the four main ones. And it's how you frame it in your unique way. But humor, spiritual wisdom and insight, music, and our characters. Otherwise, especially in a solo show, and I'm not even going to go further with memoir tonight, we'll save that for another video. You don't really have a solo show, not a stage-worthy theatrical show that you can charge an audience for. You might have a story. You can go tell a 10-minute story at a storytelling event. Great. You know, there's a place for this. But to take an audience and ask them to be there with you on this very deep journey for 65 to 75 minutes, maximum 90, by the way, even with music, you're going to have to find what makes your point of view on the story something that is new, original, and uniquely your own. So last time, humor, spiritual wisdom and insight, music, or character work, bringing other characters alive through you as a solo artist. Those are the ways into creating a great theatrical show. And this is just the beginning. So good night.